continue, but they haven't got the Nexus Towers. White Knight's back alive. He's going to try and defend. But instead, Unicorns, top side, Nexus Towers. They want the Nexus to get them. The Unicorns, they don't require it. And Splyce take down the Nexus and they take the win.
Here we see.
Tower.
I'm up with tower. Needs to go for kill Oscar. They're going for it. You need to just try to in. Just try to in. And then push.
Please.
Oh my god. Who won? Wait, we lost?
Yeah, we lost.
Was it close?
It was,
it
yeah,
was
1 minute.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
A heartbreaking day. Even didn't know if they won or not.
Did we
Imagine
lose? Did
being
we
this
win?
sad. Did we lose? Did we win? Also, I love Medic's casting there. Fetty, it's a base race. I wonder if he's always that, you know, enthusiastic about everything. If dinners, there's spaghetti. Fetty, it's spaghetti! Like, it's. I would love to have that Medic constantly commentating on my life.
Like that? That would probably get
No, it
pretty
would
annoying in
probably
the
get
end.
old.
He just kept screaming at you.
But it worked out for this replay and for the thrilling end to that
Yeah.
game. And let's hope we see the same thing today, or as much excitement, because Splyce versus Roccat. We'll see what happens today. And we wanted to just take a different way of looking at this match. We'll introduce you to that concept in just a second. But first, I want to ask you, Splyce, did they underperform in week 1 or overperform? And Roccat, did they overperform or did they underperform?
Well, based on our hype for Splyce coming into the split and the names on the roster, I would say yes, they did underperform in week 1. Especially the early game was a big problem for them, something they have to fix. Roccat, on the other hand, we looked at these players, we called them the talent factory, always making these players shine. Expected some upsets maybe later on in the split.
But boom, they started off with
Week 1, they beat G2, and it was a great start for them. And I actually think they just played at their level. They didn't overperform.
Yeah, and it's cool to see that that upset came in the beginning, because it makes us wonder how far can they go. We'll see what they can do in this match versus Splyce. And as said, we are approaching this match preview a bit differently today. We've looked at different categories to find out where each team finds an edge in this matchup. You see the categories right here.
Nice piece of paper.
Exactly, that you just wrote. And we're going to start with the draft, obviously, before the game. Very important factor. Who would you give the best draft to in week 1, Roccat or Splyce?
So this one is really hard because, first of all, it's very close and there's only a few games we can actually look at and judge the draft. But I'm going to say Roccat, and I really like this draft. This is against G2 Esports. The Zac I absolutely love from Memento's side. He can actually play aggressive with it. Mid lane Azir as well, and then you just camp for blank. So I think this was a good comp, both in terms of getting a mid laner ahead and then also playing a strong late game, which I really liked. I think Splyce gotta fix up some things. I didn't like the Ivern Ilaoi combo they did, so I'm giving this one to Roccat just slightly.
Giving this one to Roccat because they drafted a comp and then they played to their win conditions and beat G2 with it.
Yeah.
So that one goes to Roccat. Let's look at the next category, early game. And from what I remember and also what I looked up the past week, Splyce's numbers were just abysmal early, so I think they have pretty bad chance of winning this category.
Oh, I mean, it's impossible to give this one to Splyce because they were the worst team in the early game in the EU LCS week 1. It was really tough to watch how enemy teams could just gank multiple lanes and just kill people and there would be no answer. Nisqy got destroyed on the first day against Fnatic as well in the laning phase. So Roccat gets this one simply because Splyce have had so many early game issues.
I wouldn't say simply because of those Splyce issues. I just think that Blanc plus Memento were very impressed. You know, Zac and Evelyn plus Azir twice, they really put pressure on the map early and made things happen. So rightfully so going to Roccat. I agree with you there. And then let's take a look at the late game. Is Splyce finally gonna get a seal of the official approval for that one?
Yes, they will.
Wow.
I think even when they were down a lot against Fnatic, they actually had some really good fights to get back into it. I like plays like the one we're seeing here, where the entire team is ready to react on a quick move, and clearly there's synergy in the late game between them. Xerxes as well had some really good engages once we finally got to the late game. And I think they have a carry like Copy who they can rely on. So I would say Splyce's late game a little bit stronger than what we've seen from Roccat, who, even with a big goal lead, had some issues closing out the game against G2.
And Splyce was fighting back from a deficit.
Exactly. Both games.
So that one goes over to Splyce in the late game, and then specifically the team fighting. So now I want to look at more individual players, specifically the carry matchups, mid lane and bottom lane. Let's start with the mid lane, Blanc versus Nisqy in this one. And Nisqy is Belgian, I'm Belgian, so I'm of course rooting for him, but he really...
I'm Danish, so I don't.
You don't, but he really didn't have the best start. We have to be honest about that in week 1.
Yeah, and Blanc on the other side had actually a really good game, especially against G2 Esports, where he got these early kills, 3-0 up on Azir, played flawless in team fights in that one game as well. And Blank is one of the guys we are looking at to be a big carry on the Roccat side, where Nisqy clearly still needs some time to get used to the European stage here. So at the moment, Blank gets this one, and Roccat gets the advantage in the mid lane.
Yeah, and we gotta hope that Nisqy has regrouped a little bit to put something on the board versus Blanc, because Blanc is on fire and will get the seal of approval there. Finally, let's look at the bottom lane. Kobbe versus Hiku, or Hiku versus Kobbe, if we follow this order. You talked about late game team fights for Splyce, so was Kobbe then instrumental in those?
I think Kobbe will always be important when it comes to late game team fights. It's kind of where he's really good. In the early game, we don't see much from Kobbe, but good positioning, knows when to step forward and deal damage is key from him. And I like the fact he plays a lot of these scaling AD carries. I think he's still a level above Hiku, and he will be one of the members we are looking at to carry Splyce in the late game against Roccat.
And Hiku is still developing, but in this one, we would give it to Kobbe finally as well on the side of Splyce. So let's see what that then tallies up to. This empirical method says that Roccat wins, but Fishu, do you agree with this scientific assessment? Obviously, there is a lot more that goes on in a game than just these things we've talked about.
Of course.
So who would you give it to if you look at all the factors that you want to look at?
Well, I said this was a 50-50 when we looked at the schedule earlier. I think if Splyce comes in with a better early game plan, I want to see a jungle pick that can actually assist some of these lanes, especially Odoamne up in the top lane, who they can actually play around. Then I think Splyce have a really good chance of winning this one here. But if they don't do that, then I think Roccat will win.
Then you think, well, so give me a prediction, just for fun.
Prediction for this one, I'm saying Splyce will have fixed the issues and Splyce win.
All right, let's see what happens when these teams clash on the Rift. What are you guys looking forward to? Quick shot.
Well, for me, it has to be the roaring Romanian duo. Odoamne and Xerxes, of course. I mean, Deficio put it eloquently. Despite grading Splyce a fail, he says they're going to pass and win. I mean, he went back on his own scorecard.
Yeah, he kind of did. He even said in the Euphoria podcast that he actually rates Splyce as 9th after week 1. So, backtracking, analyst.
Flip-flopper. Anyways, let's start with the roster rundown. Starting on the blue side, it is the Splyce boys, with Odoamne in the top lane, Xerxes in the jungle, Nisqy the mid lane, Kobbe and Kasing, AD carry support, and their coach, Peter Dunn.
Meanwhile, their opposition will find the G2 killers Roccat looking to secure another big win tonight with their top laner Prophet, jungler Memento, mid laner Blanc, AD carry Hiku, support Norskeren, and the legendary coach, Freddy122.
Now, of course, before we started the day, there was a bit of discussion around calling Roccat the G2 Killers or the Kingslayers, which was their title last year. I think we have to go to Kingslayers because now G2 Killers, they're not the only ones.
Oh, they're not.
Oh, that makes things spicy.
Oh, it does, man. Well, we've had such an exciting split so far, and the excitement continues because we don't really know what we're going to get from these two teams today. Roccat have had some good performances. Splyce have shown poor early games, but then better late games. And we're kind of looking for a little bit more consistency from both these teams. Something like an identity, I would say, for both these teams.
Identity is defined a lot by playstyle and champions picked as well, and priority on those champions. So as we get ready for picks and bans, Xerxes played the Ivern last week, left a little bit to be desired.
A lot, yeah.
What else are we going to look at here as we're about to jump in? Remember, patch 8.1 as well, not what we're playing on live.
Now, Skarner was banned away from Xerxes, and I wonder if he chooses to bring it out himself. But as we heard from Deficio and Shox earlier on, we want to see a little bit more of an early game-focused draft from Splyce. Let's see if we can set up Nisqy for success after he did have a bit of a rough laning phase in week 1.
A little bit of a pivot on the ban there. Kasing will not be allowed to play Janna. The amount of disruption that she can offer in the mid to late game team fights is terrifying. Another Galio ban. We saw it banned out in game 1 of the day. We've seen it raising in priority because of the ability to impact those side lanes, the tankiness that Galio can pick up at the later stages of the game.
It's been a lot more popular over in the LCK too. It's just a champion that after we saw its performance, perhaps not the ideal performance from Misfits in week 1, it's slowly been etching its way up the tier lists here in Europe. And interestingly, we actually see a bit of a ban away from one of the more carry-oriented champions towards Odin.
Yeah, that's right. The Gangplank removed from the pool. It's just played in the previous game by Wonder. Didn't really have the impact he was hoping for. So Gnar is still open and available. Memento will not gain access to Evelynn, which he played last week. 1, and 2. And lost ban from Roccat.
Just a quick reminder, we are still playing on patch 8.1, so the Evelynn nerfs yet to come in. She's still considered very strong champion, definitely a big comfort pick for Memento as well. So a lot of respect being shown from Splyce, and you're expecting things like Jarvan, Sejuani, Ryze, 3 of the big picks that we've seen be a priority, along with things like the Tahm Kench, and a lower priority on things like the Alistar.
And this is where we go back to the identity point you were talking about a little earlier, Vedius. Depending on what we see Splyce and Roccat prioritize, what lanes, what type of champions, it gives you a little bit of an indication into either their comfort or what they think can help counter, you know, the opponents. Blanc's going to be denied Azir. By locking that in, I think that's a very good pick. But for Nisqy, with Ryze still open, Nisqy managed to lose both sides of the Ryze Azir matchup last week.
Yep.
And Blanc is one of these rookie mid laners, sorry, not rookie, the new to the LCS stage mid laners who looked very good. And I want to see if he can bully Nisqy around the same way some of the more veteran players did last week.
Blanc was one of the star performers on PSG. He was someone that people looked to carry, but he was just someone consistent, someone you could always rely on, someone who would always have a good performance. And we often wondered in the Challenger scene if he could convert that from a Challenger stage onto an LCS one, and last week he demonstrated that he definitely has the ability to, and now he's going to be the one playing the Ryze in this Azir matchup. And as a reminder, Nisqy did struggle in both sides of this matchup in week 1, so we're hoping that Xerxes will now pick something to help facilitate and better set up Nisqy for success.
Where do we go next? We're not really surprised yet by the picks that we've seen. I mean, those top tier
Sejuani,
junglers.
Jarvan, both still available. I'm looking at a Jarvan right now for Xerxes, along with Tahm Kench. Not really a surprise, the most popular support in the current meta. But I would be very shocked if a jungler was not locked in right now for Splyce. They may go for an early Ezreal if they want to try and put Kobe on that, but I feel like his team fighting is his true strength, and I feel like limiting him onto something like that would be a bit limited.
And you called it, Vedius. The Skarner was banned last week, is available this time round. And over the Zac, over the Sedge, over the Jarvan, locks in Skarner. So Xerxes, let's see what you can do with this pick, because we've seen the other champions be very successful.
A part of me feels like Memento's going to go for something a little more aggressive into the Skarner, maybe something that wants to invade, something that's more active and interested in trying to go for early playmaking, because what you're looking at right now from this Splyce lineup is a little more scaling with the Azir, with the Skarner. You want a couple more items under the belt of Skarner before he really starts having an impact. Whereas Roccat, they've gone for the Ezreal, huge early to mid game spike. Ryze, again, big early to mid game spike. They need to be proactive in this early game, and a part of me feels like he may go for something like a Lee Sin, or at least something a little more aggressive, where he can use the pushing lane that he has in mid and potentially top in order to try and shut down Xerxes in the jungle.
You know what? That could get amplified even more if Nisqy loses his lane. Again, if he has the same troubles, it'll open up Memento and Blanc to look for those 2v1 plays. Let's see once Phase 2 rounds out. Sivir and Caitlyn taken off the table. So Kobe last week played Sivir and Tristana as his 2 picks. Still has to decide what he'll lock in this time around. And Memento, he's lost access to Zac. Last ban from Peter Dunn and the Splyce organization. See whether it's another jungler, and it is. So those top tier guys are gone. Maybe that raises the value of this Lee Sin idea, or the early jungler idea that you've been exploring.
You're expecting something like a Jarvan here, which would be safe. He offers a bit of engage, followed with a Braum too. Makes a lot of sense, fits into a wide variety of team compositions. But part of me says that Memento wants to try and prove himself, wants to show that he can strut his stuff. Instead, he's going to pick a little more meta. I was a little off, so he's just going to go with the Kha'Zix. I think it's a fine pick. You can still be aggressive. You can still invade. You can still take advantage of the pushing power that someone like a Ryze will have in the couple of early levels once he's got his tier. And I think this is a fine pick for him.
Right, so where do Roccat and Splyce look to round to their comps? Top lane and AD carry left for Splyce to secure. Varus is one we've seen a lot around the world. Just good wave clear, good all round. Itemization.
Oh.
And it's going to be a pivot at the last second. This is why I should not talk about hovers. I'll move my attention there in a moment. Roccat, what are they lacking in their team composition? What do you think Prophet can look towards? I mean, Gnar is still open if they want to run it, but I guess it'll depend on what Splyce like.
They're very much lacking a reliable engage right now. I think Gnar could work in the sense that you have the TP flanks, you have the Gnar ultimate. Thinking of other top laners that might be available right now. Ornn still left available just as it gets locked in for the side of Splyce. I think that would have been actually wonderful for this Roccat comp, and perhaps they should have put a little bit more priority on it. But now do we look at Prophet to go for something that Odo went for last week in the form of a counter pick, like an Illaoi? Ignore it. Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
Look, the Alawi did not work out very well for Splyce last week. It ended up being camped and really was pushed back and whatnot. The Nas, what I would have expected also, not only with EU teams, but with Profit in particular. So the team compositions are now rounded out. Freddy will give his team one last piece of advice. I'm pretty sure Summer will be keep buying control wards.
Yeah.
Because last week in both of Rockat's games, their vision was far and away one of the most impressive aspects. Even in their loss to Schalke, Roccat had good vision. They're going to need that if they want to try to control this Skarner and any of the plays that Splyce want to set up.
And we've seen from Roccat one poor early game that ended in disaster against Schalke, and one phenomenal early game which they snowballed perfectly. And as we said before the draft, we want to see a bit more consistency. Is Roccat this early game focused team that knows how to use a lead, or are they the kind of team that's just very good at punishing the mistakes of their opposition, which we've seen Splyce make during the first 20 minutes of the game?
And I mean, that's really important to note. Splyce's early game, far and away the worst. The only team in the EU LCS stage to go 0-2 last week. But that base race against Unicorns of Love, technically Splyce were leading that game at the time. Committed to the base race, came out a little worse for wear. But we know that Splyce have a weak early game. We've seen the problems and the lanes being bullied. Obviously, Niski being somewhat of a liability allows the rest of the opponents to push into the jungle and create problems. That's where I want to start watching this game.
I think the thing for Splyce, though, is depending on how Niski plays the matchup, he can have pressure on this mid lane. We've seen Caps do it against Niski. And for Varus, you actually trade extremely well during the laning phase. You have a lot of harassment, you have a lot of good wave clear. And then Ornn, we've just seen got solo kills against the Gnar. Unfortunately for Odoamne, he was one of the people that got solo killed. But it doesn't mean like the lanes aren't so bad that it's an auto loss from the very beginning. Depending on how they play and if the individuals are able to step up, along with a bit of pressure from Xerxes, I can see this Splyce holding their own in terms of the early game and scaling it towards the mid lane.
All right, definitely going to hold their own. And we'll see their decision making. We do have a very brief pause. Blanc will be just going to the bathroom really quickly before we start the game. And once we get into it, I think we've set up the Roccat sort of storyline of the questions pretty well. Their polarizing performances last week, which team will show up today. With a small sample size, sweeping statements become very powerful.
Yes.
But the Splyce squad, one of the saving graces, one of the things we did see that we liked from their week one performances was some of the decision making as a team, their ability to respond thanks a lot to the players, the experience, the veterans they have on them, and the gorgeous roaring Romanian duo, locking eyes with the camera right now. And we need to see them step up because they need to be the spearhead for Splyce.
I'm hoping that they can step up. I think that Odo didn't have the best week one of his career. His mid to late game fights, as you said, were much better. He was able to do a lot of damage on things like the Alawi, but you kind of expect a little more from him, especially with the amount of praise that he's had in the past. He's often been considered one of the best top laners we have in Europe, alongside the likes of players like Chachi, Alfari, Wonder, these kind of individuals. And it's just the expectation is so high that when he makes these missteps, it's kind of like, oh, that's not really what we kind of want to see from him.
There was a really great thread on Reddit a week or 2 weeks ago where they said, what player do you think is one of the most undervalued, or I can't remember the title, but it was like who's not spoken about the most? And I feel Odoamne is one of those top laners. He's not really the flashiest. He's not the most outspoken, he's just reliable. So that's why we expect him to step up. Obviously, you can see Blanc sitting back on stage. So once he's got himself comfortable and the referees get the ready check, we'll load back onto the game. And we start to get a few more games under our belt to make a few more sweeping statements, which are some of the best,
like Vitality, best team in the world, for example.
There we go. You called it. You said it on record. Just to quickly restate, of course, Roccat got themselves some good comfort picks. The Blanc versus Niski, Rise versus Azir is the matchup I want to dive into as soon as we start. The crowd here in Berlin, Germany, putting their hands together and loading the game for Splyce versus Roccat.
Just as a reminder too, this is day one of week 2. Over in Europe here, a lot of our teams went 1-1. So getting wins on the board will now start to create a bit of gap and a bit of chaos in the ladder, rather than so many teams being even and equal. And for both these teams, picking up a win could mean a lot as we progress to the next few weeks.
Can indeed. Could have a lot of teams on 1 and 2 at the end of the day, but Just keep an eye on this early game start. 1, 2, 3, 6 stopwatches in the inventories. 3 apiece, no real surprises there. Unsealed Spellbook on Norscaren's Braum. Seeing that a little more frequently, and no Spellbook for Blanc.
Yeah, that's quite interesting from the Rise in the middle lane. We've seen across the world the Unsealed Spellbook usually go onto the Rise, largely because he wants to be able to swap between TP and heal, perhaps during the lane phase. Then in the late stages of game, you want to maybe swap that TP for the Ghost as well. You also want to have the lower cooldown on those summoner spells because it adds a lot of value the later stage into the game that you go. But instead, Blanc, he wants a little bit more damage during the laning phase and just a little bit more teamfight value with that extra comp.
See how it helps him out. Keep track of that as the game plays out. And then Xerxes on this Skarner. You know, last year made a big splash at the beginning of the year, picking a couple of unique champions and really bringing them to popularity and success. Ivern was one of the early adopters, but towards the end of the year, I remember Xerxes becoming somewhat of a meta slave. I remember playing the
He had a couple of Rengars in there, but he was also one of the players that adamantly played things like Zac and Rumble in the jungle when they really weren't that meta, yet somehow he was still able to make them work. And as a reminder, we did see Jankos bringing out the Skarner earlier out in the day, and he chose to go for a full tank itemization, rushing the Warmogs, turning that into a Locket of the Iron Solari, and I imagine Xerxes will take a similar approach, but you never really know. Maybe he does go for the solo queue style of a Trinity Force and wants to be hyper-aggressive. We'll have to keep an eye on that as the game passes.
Roger that. And keeping our eyes on the screen, unfortunately there was an incorrectly loaded graphic. So the keystones that we discussed were not 100% right.
Oopsie.
Is in fact running Unsealed Spellbook. And if I look down the list, it is an Unsealed Spellbook Xerxes in the jungle. So that is quite a dramatic change. We'll see what sort of impact that has on him and his Summoner Spell choice.
Calling it out. He's going to swap to Ignite Exhaust for that hella 1v1 outplay potential. But in reality, I think that there's a good potential that he might swap things like his Smite for a teleport in the late game, perhaps be that split push. You are a very strong duelist on Skarner, and really interesting adaptation here from Xerxes.
And then it depends on execution, right?
It's very true.
Make the decision to commit to the Unsealed Spellbook. Let's see what you can do with it. No real advantages yet in the lane. Vedius, you know, spoke to the Splyce composition and how if they play well, there is some opportunity for this team composition. They can handle the early game because we need to see Splyce work on those mistakes. That's what the Fisher was alluding to in the analysis as well, where if the Splyce squad can fix that up, some of their mid to late game decision making while behind was pretty good last week.
Yeah, I think that once this composition from Splyce is able to scale up, then they're actually looking like they have the compositional advantage. So onus is on Roccat to try and make these early plays. They should have pushing lanes and momentum already in the top lane.
Let's take a look. Unstoppable. The stun comes in at the end. A lot of damage from Taste Their Fear, but Prophet had already backed away. Don't know if he was smelling the dive. Unfortunately, Odo's able to walk to safety.
That's actually really impressive from Odo, but we have another gank. Oh, never mind. No gank in the bottom lane, but what Memento was expecting was Odo to flash under the tower, and then Memento walks away. Like, I got the flash, it's cool, we're happy. Odo didn't. So Memento starts turning around, recognizes, oh wait, he actually didn't choose the flash, he still has the summoner spells, and he has enough HP that he's not at risk of dying. Those next level mind games allow Odo to keep his flash, and if another gank happens up top, he's going to have that summoner spell still available for him.
Yeah, really great to see just the flawless use of that Bellows Breath, the annoyance, the fact that you can carry on moving. And
next patch, it's gone, but we are still on 8.1.
Which means it is here.
Yes.
You get to make use of that mechanic. So Odo escaped with his life. It's starting to see Xerxes just continue to farm up, try to get to access to that Impale, get the ultimate, you can pull backwards and look for single targets to lock down. If the onus is on Roccat, if they have some tools or some better tools to make early game plays, where does Memento and the rest of the squad go? Because it was Memento that was leading the charge last week.
Toward the top side of the map. Was having a great conversation in the office about how, with all the stopwatches in the game right now, playing towards the bot side is extremely challenging because if you try to dive, you're going to have multiple Zhonyas. It becomes extremely difficult, especially with all the teleports in the game. And with the Unsealed Spellbook, it becomes easy for a 5-man bot party to happen. So instead, you should play towards the top side of the map, try and get a couple kills on your mid and top laners, or even the Kha'Zix. That would be great for the side of Roccat. But basically playing towards the top side of the map. But for now, Roccat haven't really been able to push that hard in terms of the early laning phase. After first back, you'll see, you should expect to see a slight difference. So you can see Tier picked up for the Rise. This will give you a lot more pushing power and trading power, but Nisqy holding his own for the time being. And Prophet, this is wow. He's picked up the double Dorans. He has a little bit more harass power. Odo a little afraid of a possible gank coming in, so they're playing a little more defensive.
Playing indeed. If you look at the stats on the side of your screen, last week when Nisqy played against Exiled Rise, he was down 17 CS by 15 minutes. Currently, he's trading even farm with Blank, so we'll keep an eye on the performance as the game goes on. Kasing has flashed forward for this one. Defensive flash from Norscared, and Hikyu uses summon a heal, so 2 summoner spells for 2, and that may make Norscared a target. Also does not have the stopwatch in his inventory.
So Roccat, bottom lane, forced to back away a little bit, will relieve some of the pressure. I like the aggression from Kasing though, trying to utilize this Tahm Kench to make something happen. But so far, pretty standard game for us.
Even slow pace start. We didn't see that. Nobody saw that. Nobody saw that.
So what, Trevor?
Exactly. Just a little bit of trading. It was a zoning ultimate.
Right, I understand. I do those all the time.
Zoning ultimate. I guess it is difficult if Memento or even Xerxes actually want to play to the top lane, because there's a lot of tools for both of these top lane champions to deal with dives, to have answers and whatnot. So it sounds simple. Focus top lane, there's less stopwatch itemization to protect you.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's much harder. Xerxes going to get that shield from his W pop. Really trying to defend the control ward. Norscared will pick up the kill. Round Warp is going to bring
he went
into the fray, and Nisqy with the Shurima shuffle pulls it short. Blank is able to escape with his life for now until the stuns come down. First blood picked up by Kobe, a hail of arrows to the face of Roccat. Now they're running for their lives as Splyce. They get the first objective in Kobe's hands.
Very surprised that Blank chose to take that round warp into 3 members of Splyce. I thought it was just a zoning tool the Roccat will use to help Memento and Norscared disengage. Instead, he overcommits. Nisqy comes in with the ultimate, and Splyce end up losing an early blue buff along with the early kill.
I mean, really good. As soon as you get Blank down, move into the enemy jungle. Kasing and Xerxes, they're still a blue, and this is the play again.
So I'm keeping my eyes on Blank right now. Yeah, he just chooses to stay in it. He recognizes, oh, we're actually disengaging. Memento doesn't want to fight anymore. He doesn't have his ultimate to stick into the fray. Kobe gets him much earlier than Hikyu does, so he's able to contribute and even get the kill in this slight skirmish. And it will give a slight gold advantage to Splyce. So we wanted to see stronger early game. This isn't really on the premise of Splyce, but they are successfully punishing the over-aggression from Roccat.
Exactly, punishing the move that Memento had set up with Norscared. If you look at the mini-map, there's some defensive vision around the dragon, the mountain dragon for now. And for Roccat, it's not the same strong opening that we're seeing, but it's a small advantage to Splyce. And here's the observers very clearly highlighting that defensive ward placement. The strongest for actually to secure the dragon, though.
Things are coming down from the Roccat side, recognizing Xerxes top side right now. Talked a little bit about the Matt and Drake. Going to be a big pickup for either side. When you think about the Baron taking or objective taking power, you definitely have to give the advantage to Splyce. Skarner, surprisingly quick, not only just clearing through the jungle, but also just chunking through things like the Dragon and the Baron. And that will have a lot of value. So stacking up the mountains will just make those objectives in the later game that much more dangerous of a target for Roccat to play.
Yeah, definitely the case. And we'll look at Xerxes' items as he continues to scale. We've got the Cinderhulk start again that we saw from in the previous game. And Norscared is going to do a stand behind me hop to Hikyu. Some body blocking from Kasing as the mini wave pushes forward. And some magical footwear picked up. 1, 2, 3, 5 people went for that rune this game, so it's already started to populate the inventories. And Splyce were pretty content, plus 1,000 gold. They've got first blood onto their AD carry Poppy, setting themselves up for what looks to be an uncontested dragon. Yeah, first people to move, Kobe and Kasing. So this is a very, very good start for Splyce. working on the biggest area of weakness from week 1.
Yep. I think this is a great growth we're seeing from Splyce right now. To be fair, we still have to acknowledge that Roccat did make that slight mess up, and now this is going to slow them down in terms of their proactivity. But here we go, the first early move, or the second rather, from Roccat. Blanc and Momentum moving to the top side. Are they going to try and get that first tower?
Looks to be some chip damage for now. Prophet was left unattended. He's got a 20 CS advantage over Odo1. And yeah, the supporter's already left the lane on the Roccat side. So that unsealed spellbook for Odo, he started Flash Exhaust, obviously new to TP a few minutes ago. And Splyce will just be pretty content with this, you know. Look to play the map, look to scale up. As you've already mentioned, Vedius, the comp will be very happy playing for the mid to late game.
Yeah, it certainly will be. So, Kobbe decided to go for the Rage Blade, much more common now on champions like Varus. The interesting thing, for those that may not know, is that Rage Blade, in terms of extended trades, once you're able to get a lot of those stacks up, is where you see a lot more of the value from the item in these drawn-out fights. And it does especially well against tankier frontlines. You know, when you have to hit them for a long period of time, champions like Braum, who sit there with the shield, and Gnar in the Mega Gnar form, when you're able to get those stacks, that's when you start doing really consistent DPS. It's less burst than, say, the crit, so perhaps a little less effective against squishier targets. But in drawn-out fights, when you have champions like Azir and Skarner, who are also doing those drawn-out sort of DPS style of team fights, you can see why this kind of build has a lot of value, and for those interested.
And of course it has to scale up, right? It's
very
not straight up.
Yes.
The Rage Blade needs to get to max stacks. We'll see Kobbe's positioning in team fights, and if he's
Has been praised.
if he has enough time provided by Odo, Xerxes, and Kissing, and yeah, Kobbe's strongest suit is probably team fight positioning. Also one of those players that's a little quieter, a little less spoken about. What do you think of this? Memento trying to set up a play.
I honestly think
He's got vision for a while.
He's just playing with his invisibility right now.
Okay,
like,
okay.
Now you see me? No, you don't. Now you see me? No, you don't.
I wondered if he was going to take the blast cone over the wall, try to set something up. I mean, Rockat's vision, they've got at least a ward in the tri-bush for now, but still very defensive. Very much their side of the map, protecting the lane that's being pushed in. Kobbe and Kissing have been in Hiku and Norscaren's face almost the entirety of this laning phase, and that's why that bottom outer turret.
Jungle face-off.
Now.
Who's going to draw first? Neither. Instead, going to put their guns back in the holsters, walk away. No action will continue. I mean, for Splyce, this is ideal. This is perfect. They want nothing more. They want the slow early game. They want their items done. Roccat, it's going to be harder for them. In the mid-game, they still will have a solid spike, and will be able to challenge Splyce, but again, it's the scaling game. You see it a lot in the current meta. And here we go, Blank now, moving to the top side. Let's see how this plays out.
All right, Morel Warp will jump onto Odo1's face. Call it the Forge God, not going to have the double tag, but there's the Gnar into the wall. Prophet made that look easy with Blank, but it's not done yet. Kobbe now on the bottom lane. He's looking for Hiku. These stopwatches used to buy some time, but not enough time. Kobbe takes down Hiku and Roccat. They managed to lose one for taking one in the top lane. Splyce punish the dive top, and they take tower first blood and the reply kill in the bottom lane.
Absolutely perfect answer from Splyce. The moment they see something happening towards the top side, they're able to find a fight in the bottom and secure themselves first tower blood. Roccat, I feel like Blanc made a bit of a bad decision there, because they should have recognized that, hey, Xerxes is in the bottom lane. Tahm Kench can very quickly move people from one area to the other. It's very quick for Splyce to collapse towards the bottom side of the map, and I think that Blanc saw an opportunity to set up a dive top. I just don't think it was the best timing for it. So just keep your eyes on the minimap. Yes, Blanc going top side, the whole dive works out nicely. They have all their ultimates. There's nothing Odo can really do, but everyone from Splyce is in position to just move towards the bottom side of the map. And you're just waiting for Xerxes to come in with the ultimate, land it onto Hiku, and then they get themselves an easy kill.
Yeah, the double teleports as well on the side of Splyce, so the compounding problems is now Splyce can play the map. They've still got teleport for Odo1. There's unsealed spellbook for Xerxes Skarner. I haven't seen him change his summoners yet.
Not yet.
Could do so. Basically, it just has this window of opportunity where Splyce can push their 1,500 gold lead that they've built up, and in contrast to their 3,500 gold deficits from last spring at this point.
Splyce fans will be much happier with this kind of a game, but it also brings into question which Roccat is the true Roccat, because we're now again seeing these varying performances where they have 4 early games that end in disaster after one bad move, and some fantastic early games which they're able to successfully snowball and cleanly take. And right now, things not looking as clean, not looking as optimal, but there's still plenty of time left for Roccat.
Yes, and it's early in the season, right? Minus 3,400 gold at 15 across 2 games last week. That was the drop down that Splyce showed. If you had named, plates turned off, you'd probably say it was a different team. Watching Splyce last week, watching them this week, it also just shows you how little room for error there can be, as how punishing it is. Teams play 18 games in the regular season. And they've got to really step up and show up every single week. So now the pressure's on Roccat. How do they play from behind? How does Blank and Memento respond to the tip of the spear from last week? Memento had no early game impact points.
Indeed. He tried to make one play, and it backfired, and ended up in the death of mid laner. He's level 9. He has decided to go for Moby Boots, and Zeus is just like, I bet I'm faster than you. Does have the Crystal Spires. We didn't talk much about them in last game. They do give Skarner a bunch of benefits, so having control over them is extremely valuable. And you can just see how much impact Memento was able to have last week. He was one of the big early game playmakers. Yep. One of the players we were looking at being like, you know what, he's one of the reasons why Roccat can be proactive and why they've shown to be, at least against G2. But unfortunately for this game, they have not been able to. No, they haven't, but Splyce is going to be content. Average game time in EU over last week was around 42 minutes. We had a meta with these scaling champions are defined by so much. The stopwatch and the itemization from your rules buy so much time, etc., etc. But it also means we get to see some really crazy, intense late game team fights. Oh, yeah. Huge itemization, and teams with better communication and better ability to play those fights have come out ahead many times already. And going back briefly to Kobby's build, across the world we've seen quite a wide variety. He has decided to go for Runans rather than some of the on-hit builds that we've seen in Static Shiv and even Wit's End that do a lot more magic damage. He's like, you know what, we have plenty of magic damage with our composition. I'm just going to focus a little bit more on AD. So now I'm expecting him to go for a Blade of the Ruin King to help shred through a little bit more of those tanks, give a bit of extra percentage health damage. And that will round his build out quite nicely before he then starts building either defensively, depending on how he feels, or he might go for some of the more bigger items like an Infinity or a Bloodthirster if he feels the need. Alright, let's see how Kobby does once he gets these 2 items in. Talking about items, Odo is really being bullied by Prophet. Prophet's had a lot of support as well, so that's why he's got plus 52 CS. He gets chunked down by Memento, Taste of Fear. Does so much work. But we need to look at the impact that Odo's going to have in his team fights, because that's where Orn's going to shine. Splyce going to force the advantage. Got a 3-man stack up top. Get the outer turret down to 20-odd%. Orn continues to push by Odo in the bottom lane. Prophet's been pulled up middle, so now Roccat, they have to defend against this sort of tower siege by Splyce. This is pretty relatively smart though from Roccat, where they don't need to just keep Prophet in the bottom lane, and seeing as Blank was rotating up top, they just have someone catch the farm so there's not too much pressure and they don't lose that kind of pressure. And then you can just quickly transition Prophet back down towards the bot side, he won't lose any farm, and then Blank will then rotate back around to mid just as the wave hits, allowing them to maintain control. So I think it was actually quite smart wave allocation there from side of Rock. What do they do next? Rockat's obviously playing defense. Maybe there's a little bit of a time limit on them, to We'll answer that question in a moment, because Kasing is starting to channel the Abyssal Voyage. Jumping in behind Hiku, Chain of Corruption tags him, but not before the Arcane Shift is fired. Now Splyce running for their lives. Devour will buy a few seconds of time for Xerxes. Teleport comes in, Prophet's coming in from behind, TP channel. Meganon needs to build up. The Gnar bar not there. Odo Wonder is now joining the fight as the Hop and the secondary prop. Nets Prophet to safety. The Forge Guard is called his block. North Scarrett prevents him fighting Odo Wonder, and Splyce are now in trouble. The Shurima shuffle will not be needed. Niski under a lot of threat. Niski goes forward, 1-for-1. Memento for Niski. The Gnar into the wall. That sets it up for Roccat, and they shut down Splyce. 4 members fall as Hiku's running low on mana, looking to chase Xerxes, but I don't know if you can. A 2-for-4 in favor of Roccat. This is exactly what Roccat were looking for. Quickshot, you just asked, what are the next moves? Splyce had a clear game plan. Utilize the Tahm Kench ultimate to flank off Hiku, force him back, and secure ourselves our second tower of the game, but Roccat had other plans. They found an answer. They found a way to fight back. They thought that with the flank from Prophet, they would be able to force something, but he had no Mega Gnar. You're thinking to yourself, uh-oh, this is not looking good. And just keep your eyes on the mini-map this time around. Look at all the little wards littered behind, and then Ruin TP's in. You think, okay, Splyce get the tower, they're disengaging, they're good, they're happy. Odo's going to follow up soon, because it's really difficult for Roccat to really engage. They're throwing bits of poke, they're just trying to catch up to Splyce, but they can't really lock things down. So at this point, Splyce really should disengage. They should be happy with the tower, but they feel confident enough that they can engage with Call of the Forge God, which gets blocked by Norscarin. And then, unfortunately for Memento, he just thinks he can do more damage than he can take, ends up losing his life. And this, right here, Kasing flashes in to save his mid laner, and then his mid laner flashes away. This not only gets his mid laner killed, but Kasing gets left up a creek without a paddle, ends up losing his life. And Norscarin is able to celebrate after getting a huge teamfight win for
Oh, he did a half dab. I wish he fully committed for that one. Deserved after that unbreakable blocked Call of the Forge God. So Roccat, they turn around the gank in the top lane. They're still in a gold deficit, albeit it is a very small one. That's a flash engage from Xerxes. Memento's the target. He's going to be able to leap to safety. Norscarin's trying to block as much damage as he can. Glacial Fissure gets thrown down as Kasing is slowed and tagged and being chunked up by that red buff. This time the Forge God will find its target, but Splyce is still in retreat. Not going to find a Winter's Bite on that one. Kasing gets dropped by the True Shot Barrage, and Roccat continue the chase. The amount of slows to hold Splyce back and keep them on a short leash means Roccat chased forever. 5v4 on the Peelington River.
Look at all these wards littered across the Baron from Roccat. They have full control over this area of the map right now. They're baiting Splyce in. Will Splyce take the bait?
Oh, I always feel nervous when you see this. Roccat are on the Baron. They start from this one. Uncontested for now. Splyce will arrive. There is a smite available. Because there's 5v4. Shurima Shuffle
no
available.
Flash, though.
Niski, the Baron is the focus. It's picked up by Roccat. Now the fight breaks out. Odo is left up a creek without a paddle, and Memento takes him down. Niski sends the Sand Shoulders out. That's a very good Emperor's Divide. Buys just enough time for the rest of Splyce to escape. But Odo and Niski die, and Baron goes to Roccat.
But this was a big misplay from Splyce. Xerxes flashed in to get an ulti onto Memento, and by killing him, they thought, look, we have a numbers advantage, we can then take the mid lane tower, and everything looks grand. But he didn't account for the fact that Memento already built the QSS. He felt like he would be the target that Xerxes would go for, and by building that and countering it, now Xerxes has no flash, he has no way to escape the re-engage from Roccat, and they end up falling to disaster. Good item purchase from Memento, good reactions, and I now understand why he's gone for the Unsealed Spellbook. It is for the reduced flash cooldown, so that he can look to make these kind of flash plays more often.
Only if you don't have QSS, you're going to see the action right there for Memento.
So he hard commits, he has the tower aggro. Yes, Kasing's able to take him out to safety, but now one of the big engage tools, or one of the big deterrents against Roccat is now unavailable. So they then slowly work their way closer. Keep your eyes on Blank as well, looking for an angle to get in on. Kasing, he doesn't have his flash as it was still down from the previous fight. And then the ultimate from PQ to clean up the kill. And then this Baron, again, it all came down from the good control. Roccat have shown last week how effectively they set a vision around this area of the map. They know that Xerxes can't get in because he doesn't have the flash, and a good route for Blanc to keep him out as well enables them to secure the Baron. And now they've reclaimed full control over the game.
Yeah, of course, when we come out of this, you'll see that Roccat have a 3,000 gold lead. And all of the confidence and all of the momentum. Blanc, despite not, running away with the game in the laning phase, he's 4-1-2. Hourglass completed already. 8.1, so gonna have that ability to escape, as you've seen time and time again. And for Roccat, they've just got a lot of options now. Siege power on the side lane. Prophet, he's pushing down bottom, going for that full split push build. Norscarin, the Unbreakable, has already eaten the Forge God. And Roccat, they're happy keeping Splyce at arm's length.
The onus is on Roccat, though, to be able to close this game out. We've seen it a lot across the world where teams, yes, this is a great situation for Roccat to be in, but if the game goes to 35-40 minutes, Splyce's comp will outscale. They will start winning these team fights. They will be in a better situation. So let's see now how effectively Roccat can close. They did it against G2. They need to do it again.
And of course, Rockat's macro against G2 for the first 27 minutes of the game.
Very clean, yes.
But there was 1 or 2 missteps towards the end.
Individual misplays, yeah. Players like Memento, Prophet, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time enabled G2 to find a lot of these picks, but Splyce right now have not been able to do it. They've just lost 4 towers, maybe 5 in the space of a couple minutes.
And because people were on the Splyce side, were trying to chase Prophet, it opened up enough time for that top inhibitor turret to get chunked down 50% of its hit points. So let's see what are the openings Prophet can make, because there's only 1 outer turret still standing for Splyce. That's down in the bottom lane. And if you look through the itemization, QSS picked up for HQ, along with the QSS for Memento. Blade of the Rune King is the item that's Kobe's going towards, which you were talking about earlier, Radius. So there's even some tankiness now for Prophet with that Ranger's Omen. So he's even going to be frustrating to deal with.
Oh, he's even picked himself up a Frozen Mallet to then echo that of Hikyu, or the power.
And the Nas that we've seen in Korea this week have gone Hurricane as like a 4th item.
Oh yeah, towards the late game.
Frozen Mallets.
Yeah, it gives a lot of extra wave clear too, especially when you're behind. But I don't think Prophet's going to need that this game. He's looking pretty happy. Blank has completed the Archangel Staff. That is one scary rise at this point in the game. Roccat want nothing more than to force a fight now. I think they have 2 options. Their siege is not the strongest because they're relatively low range, and while you have a decent amount of poke from Ezreal, it's difficult for him to get close to the tower and actually take those structures down, especially with the good wave clear on Splyce. So I think that they either want to try and take control of the jungle and try and force a hit, or they're just going to wait for the Baron to respawn.
Play around the Baron, utilize Blanc. You can see his stats on your screen from One of the very big carries for Roccat. Pretty close to that kill participation now, 6 out of the team's 8 kills. And Baron will be up in, what, 2 and a bit minutes. Roccat can use that to either start a fight or get Baron and then play the map game.
Yeah, vision is what you want to be looking at from Roccat right now. You mentioned it earlier on, and we're going to see it again. Just the control they have over the map is always so impressive to see, especially for such a newly formed roster. They're doing an excellent job in this one.
I'm going to call it Freddy's vision. I have no proof to substantiate this statement whatsoever. But Freddy, one of the greatest onstage coaches.
The Aatrox
greatest, exactly, win last moments. But in all seriousness, you know, a real veteran of EU LCS. Freddy, of course, played for several years on stage before being an assistant coach and now lead coach. And last week, the vision from Roccat was great. You can see it again.
It's so good.
It's just littered. But you need to make use of that vision. That's the next step. You can have good wards.
Potential.
Use that information. Where did he go?
Oh, he just cancelled it. A zoning time control, perhaps. Memento now looking for a
Going to find many opportunities. I mean, not even a teleport on the side of Splyce. Oda1 has used the unsealed spellbook to change to exhaust. Use that to try and limit the impact that a Memento or Blanc or Hikyu, if you can get to him, will do in a team fight. And as it stands, Roccat, I feel like this is going to be a Baron. They're not overcommitting to those inhibitor turrets, and that's the right call to make when you're approaching 30 minutes. You've got a substantial lead, over 6,000 gold.
Yeah, they're just playing the 1-3-1 now. We talked about it earlier. Blanc has now changed to the Ghost. This is going to give him a little bit more mobility, a little bit more value in team fights. But basically, they push all 3 lanes, and they just litter the enemy jungle with wards. They narrow the amount of map that Splyce has available. Now, what Splyce want to do is move together into the enemy jungle, reclaim some of this vision, but then as they're reclaiming it, all their wards disappear, and then Roccat will have the vision advantage. So they go in, they clear it out, the Splyce is going back to restop. That's when Roccat forces the Baron, and either force Splyce to face check and potentially a bad fight, or they just lose the Baron.
All right, keep an eye on how effectively Roccat do that. I'm asking a grade there, seeing as though we've done a few report cards today. Splyce are pushing forward. They're going to capture that Baron Spire for Xerxes Skarner. Gets access to some of those stats. And while Splyce are at least challenging the vision superiority, it's Prophet that's going to get the advantage. He's shoving down the bottom lane, and that minion line is about to crash with that bottom turrets.
So Roccat, they're just playing the lanes right now. They have mid priority. This is what you want first. Always make sure that you have the push in the middle lane. And then you sweep through the river and you clear out all the vision. There's nothing they can do about the Scuttle Crab, but the river belongs to Roccat. And look at the inventory. No wards on top of Kasing, no wards on top of Xerxes, which means that Splyce have to base if they want to reset the vision up. This will allow Roccat, the moment they do, to rush the Baron down and secure themselves another objective.
All right, let's see how quick are Roccat to respond. Where's the first movers?
See a couple of things.
Just yet, a couple of Splyce members are now starting to back away, and Roccat, 8,000 gold up, 8 kills to 4, 5 towers to 3. Every single metric is in their favor.
See, I feel like they could have forced it a little bit harder there, but Rockat's still playing it safe. They know they have the map advantage. Still a couple, or at least a ward on top of Memento. Blank needs to be careful.
So you're going to take a few marks off.
Yeah, a couple. I feel like they could have forced something a little harder there, especially with no TP on Odo right now.
Okay, Odo1 is going to pick himself a fight with Blank, and the Realm Warp is already used. This will allow Prophet to teleport into the pit. Vision Plant is used by Splyce, and all of a sudden, it's a showdown. 5v5. Splyce's presence alone is enough to stop the Baron.
See, now this is super weird to me because Prophet is the one that used his TP, and I can imagine that their goal here was to actually rush it down because they committed rather than waiting for Odo to TP in, which he doesn't actually have. Therefore, now Splyce have the TP advantage. They can keep Odo bot. I would imagine, yeah, so he's going to swap it back now, and they can just keep him in a lane against Prophet, who now has to move up with the rest of his team as the Baron gets started once again.
Yeah, it has been. There's a couple of wards inside the pit here that Splyce are fully aware of the vision. Norscaren's going to come over the wall at the blast going. Baron's already secured by Roccat. Call of the Forge Guard interrupted by Norscaren, and now Splyce are looking for the fight. Norscaren's in trouble. That's a suppression. Down and killed onto Blank. It's a 1 death for Baron buff. Probably a good trade for Roccat.
Yeah, it was a bit messy overall, but they get the objective that they wanted. Roccat walk away happy. Significant gold lead still in their favor as Splyce now group up towards the mid lane.
40-second death timer on Blank, who had Hourglass and Flash available, just caught off guard, surprised by that engage. Splyce will at least take 1 tower, but they're still in a deficit, and they somehow have to fend off Roccat with Baron on 4 members.
Well, Roccat have to wait for Blank to come back to life. 20 seconds left, so they'll likely go clear out the side waves. I feel like Prophet should head down bot, clear out that wave too, and then start pushing up with the rest of the team. But remember how challenging it still is. There's a lot of wave throw on this Splyce side. You can't just walk up to the base and take what you want. It's going to have to be patient. They're going to have to play on all 3 lanes, split Splyce apart, and gradually work their way into the enemy base. This is how Splyce have stalled before. Yeah. This is how they were able to make that 67-minute game happen against Unicorns of Love. There is no Sivir this time around, but Splyce still have the tools in order to stall this game.
I mean, Azir Varus has got so much wave clear. If they can hold on to it, if they can somehow defend their structures. And, you know, Betis, you have said it a few times, Roccat needs to force those opportunities. Something we, started talking about when we were looking at Roccat as an organization. This is an org that has sort of developed talent, a talent factory, if you will. Over the years, more LCS players have played in Roccat than any other team. They often are growing, shining stars and then move on to, different teams and maybe greener pastures for some. And here we're starting to see this again. Blanc starting to rise, doing really well. Prophet turned around. He played last year.
This is much earlier, I would say. Typically when you look at the Roccat rosters, they always start off a little rough around the edges, but then mids to late split is when the rosters really start to pick things up and where they start to showcase some of their talents, especially in 2017 when they came so close to playoffs in both spring and summer. Having this kind of a start is going to mean a lot for the organization, the players, and an opportunity to finally make it back into playoffs.
Especially because Roccat fell behind this game. We're behind for what, 25, 26 minutes?
Yep.
We've just gone past 35 and some golf claps in the crowd as Roccat gingerly knock over the inner turret.
So we see them now playing all 3 lanes. Still Baron buff on the rise, which will build the pushing power a little bit. You just want to spread Splyce out thin, rather than group up into a single lane where Niski can find an ultimate or Kobe can get that ultimate off as well. You want to try and spread them out and make the wave clear harder and then slowly just chip down these towers. But with only 40 seconds left on the Baron, I don't know if Roccat are going to be able to get a huge amount off the back.
What about the perspective of Splyce? We've been singing Rockat's praises for obvious reasons, but now they're 10k gold down. They have scaling on their side, but how on earth where do you start to pull this game back? Well, defending the tower is obvious, but what happens next?
Around 3 to 4 items. Like, you look at some of the stuff that's being completed for Splyce, and this roster or this composition will definitely do a lot of damage. It's simply a matter of finding the fight onto as many members of Roccat as possible. Because if you now group up as 5 and, say, run it down mid, you could lose your top tower and your inhibitor, which is not what you really want to do as Blanc. An overstep, but he has the get-out-of-jail-free card.
He does. Hourglass used in Realm Walk. Deficio loves that move so much. More the Deficio escape.
So much.
Find out more if you go listen
Good
to
flank.
Euphoria EU podcast. Before the Forge Guard is used, caught up there by Norscarin, but Roccat have already opened the base in the top lane. It looks like they'll open the base in the mid lane. Inhibitors are now exposed, so Roccat will be able to start chipping away at those, and despite the fact Baron buff has worn out, I think crucially, they've opened up access to Splyce, and that's where this 12,000 gold lead, the ability to team fight, and maybe counter how Splyce want to engage and play those fights, that's how Roccat can look to close out this game.
Unfortunately, quick shot probably means we're going to have to wait for another Baron. So we have to entertain our audience in the meantime.
We do.
Do you know how to waltz?
Tell stories. I would, but I'm attached to a cable. So
I didn't say do you want to waltz, I
Oh!
just didn't know how to waltz.
See, I was preempting the next question. I'd say yes, and I'd say as long as you lead.
It's like my mother told me when I was young. She thought that it would be great at helping me pick up women.
Has it?
No,
Ah.
it does not. A lot of them just go,
I'll dance with you.
that's very sweet of you.
But yes, once I get my headphones off, we'll entertain the crowd. And before that, Splyce have to entertain us, because it's the third game in a row where
They've struggled.
there's some frustrations that this team has to
Oh,
overcome,
yeah.
especially because they worked on their early game, clearly, from last week to this week. But unfortunately, they're not able to hold it together as they transition to the mid game.
Come on, Splyce. Make a fight happen. Obviously, it is rather difficult, right? Like, how many QSSs have we got on the side of Roccat? It looks to me like they've got 3. Because you also have the Mercurial Scimitar there. None on Prophet, but he has a GA, so he's not the prime target. So best case scenario for Xerxes is he gets onto Blank and is able to drag him into his team. That's naturally quite challenging. And your engage is rather limited from Odoamne, given that you have the Bronze Shield too. So best case scenario for Splyce is you either find a TP flank with some of the walls that they've now regained, or you go for a Tahm Kench flank and you try and bring Xerxes straight onto the back.
Oh, so risky though. You messed that one up. The team split up and they just get chewed up by Ryze and Ezreal. So Splyce dancing on a knife's edge. 1 minute to Baron, 140 until Elder. I want to have a slightly more focused look on the Skarner pick in particular. It was banned last week. We've seen it twice today. Obviously, the itemization counters are good. And there's the Deficio high skill escape for Blanc to make his way out. But what do you think of Skarner in the current meta and the way it's been utilized today?
I think that it's really difficult to optimize. It takes a while to ramp up. I'm yet to see its true value. Here comes an engage from... Oh, okay, he went on to Hikyu, actually, who burned both summoner spells. That was fine, but meanwhile, Prophet in the top lane. This is the risk of engaging onto the Roccat comp. You end up losing something elsewhere, and Roccat playing this 1-3-1 quite nicely.
Inhibitor falls low, not killed yet. Prophet decides to re-engage. Chain of Corruption finds Blank. The target, though, is Norscarin. He's pulled all the way forward. No, making his way out is Blank. That was caught by the Impale. Pardon my misspeaking there. Now Memento's running for his life. Okay, Inhibitor is still the focus in the top lane. Odo has managed to push him away. Trading Blank for the Inhibitor, still probably a good call. And Roccat maintain map control.
I feel like Blanc has made a couple of missteps this game, and that was another one, because he didn't have his ultimate available. He was playing way too far up, given the protection that he did not have available to him. Nearly cost him both Norscarin and Memento's life as well, and that could have ended in disaster for this Roccat team. And now with the Baron alive, Splyce could look to make a rush play for him.
And Vedius, it was those individual mistakes against G2 that almost allowed G2 back into the game last week. Roccat had enough of a lead to still close the game out, but it's now on Splyce. They're still in a 12,000 gold hole. It's 10 seconds before Blank is up and available. No teleport available to him. 5 versus 4. Call of the Forge God is available for Odoamne and Splyce. They're not fancying their chances yet.
Okay, they don't take the gamble. They're instead just going to continue scaling. They have a lot of damage on their squad now. Infinity Edge finished for Kobe as well. He is a little under-leveled, but aside from that, Splyce happy with their current position. They have only lost 1 inhibitor. Roccat just doing their So here we go. Elder Drake started up. Let's see if Splyce can find some kind of an answer.
Okay, only the single dragon on the side of Roccat. It's the Cloud Drake. So it's not going to be the most powerful of Elders, but at least it also denies it from Splyce. Realm Warp is available for Blank.
I don't think they have any idea that this is going on.
He wants to start a fight to be able to come up. Roccat are playing distraction game with the picture-in-picture. Shows us Elder secured. Now remember, it's still a very big gold lead for Roccat. They're looking to chase down Splyce, and Super's in the top lane. Elder to back them up. Baron's available. Not the greatest vision yet.
Okay, now Prophet, go bot, clear out the wave. Mainly you want to keep Prophet bot because he has the TP, but with the Mega Knight disappearing, instead they just said, okay, this is a better position for us, let's clear out the waves, move back towards Baron, set up the good vision control, take that objective, and then, in theory, it should be a clean end for Roccat. But given what Splyce have a tendency to do, I don't know if it's as clean cut as that.
Well, we're back to the vision setup Baron game, and earlier you described the key steps that Roccat need to do to play around that vision and take control. This time round, they've got enough of a lead and enough vision to just start it very quickly. But Baron, 7,000 hit points still to burn through. Splyce would be here far too late to really contest. Can they get any exit frags? Roccat stuck together, the Glacial Fissure thrown down just as a disengage tool. It literally was a zoning ultimate.
Yeah, bit of a deterrent.
This will allow Blanc to get some damage onto the inhibitor turrets. The escape once more. 50% inhibitor, rather. He's taken down. So for Roccat, this is a really good, really clean late game. One or two small mistakes, they have enough of a lead that they can get away with.
And Seer turret coming to help stall.
It's just such a dire situation. 15,000 gold deficit. Just remember that for every single fight. The amount of combat stats that allows Roccat to have as an advantage means even a few mistakes will be covered by just monumental item leads.
Right, but the other thing to remember is that last week when Unicorns of Love fought Splyce, the reason why it was so drawn out is Roccat and Unicorns have or had a very similar composition, which sure, in the late game it falls off, and when the gold is at this kind of point, you are kind of in the late game, and this Splyce composition should have more damage, but they can't start any fights.
Yeah.
Which means that Roccat never actually have to fight, which is why it's now we're seeing a lot less kills. They just play the map, which they're doing a very good job of. They've maintained excellent vision control around Splyce's jungle. They've done a great job of playing the 1-3-1 and constantly dividing Splyce up, and it's taken them a while, but they're playing the patient game, they're not over-eager, and that is an issue that we've seen from some young teams where they just like, they get frustrated and they go, let's make the play, we have to enforce the tower, we have to do this, and they're not doing that.
Yeah, going a bit too ham at times.
Yes.
So, good coordination. In-game leadership, I'm expecting it to be Memento. He's one of the more outspoken players, has been a leader on previous teams, and has been fairly outspoken about his growth after being in the LCS, going away for splits, and now returning. Just heard from our production team that it is a Splyce pause. In-game technical issues just going to cause a restart here for Odo's machine. So we'll get him rebooted and loaded back up into the game. And it's dire straits now for Splyce.
Yep.
I know we've talked a lot about it, but I'm happy to see growth in their biggest area of weakness from last week's games on stage, their early game.
But even then, I would argue that they've drafted themselves again another scaling composition with a really limited amount of engage, when their only early game lead actually came from the fact that they punished an overstep from Memento, who was then, resulted in Blank overstaying and losing his life. And yes, I will credit Splyce for making that excellent cross-map play in the bottom lane where they got a couple kills and they were able to get that tower down. But then the Xerxes mid-flash, I think that's just such a big mistake that you can't afford to overlook, right?
Trying to, chase the loss maybe, you're behind, you need to make a big play. And
they weren't behind, like they actually had a bit of a lead back then, So you're sitting there, you're looking at Xerxes and you're like, for a veteran player, why would you be feeling those kind of things, Like,
no, you are right.
He has a lot of experience, and bringing out these unique picks, great. It's clearly something that other junglers agree with him, works, but I am yet to see the true value of Skarner.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out yet. Obviously, Odo1, he has rebooted back into the client in the game, double-checking all the settings are correct, that his configuration is set up appropriately. And once Odo gives us the thumbs up, we will resume the game. 42 minutes in, 14,000 deficit, Splyce on your screen. First time they've had to rebuild their roster completely from the ground up. It was the Danish dynamic group, 4 of them, the 5, the Brotherhood, the best friends club.
Yep.
No more. Kabi the only returning player. And of course, Roccat, they've gone through roster rebuilds a few times. They've had a lot of players come through their gates. There's obviously I get an update on the technical reasons here, but for Splyce, 5 names, a lot of experience, a lot of games between them, but they need to find synergy as a team.
Yep.
5 individuals. And that's where some of these mistakes and some of these problems are coming from.
It certainly is. I wonder if it's a bit of a communication issue with inside Roccat, because I mainly look at Blank, and I'm picking on him a little bit today just because he had such an excellent performance last week. And then compared to the individual mistakes that he has made in this game specifically, I'm wondering, like, okay, did you really need to be standing there? Did you really need to try and force this play? Did you need to be this over-eager? And I think that's just very much a communication thing, you know, where it's like, hey, we're doing this right now. Make sure that you bear this in mind, respect this, and do this. And as you rightly said, it's a synergy thing that comes with time. It's something that will build over the course of the split. And again, for Roccat, starting off this strong, this early, is definitely a positive sentiment given the last year of pro play.
It is, and then we need to see them continue the growth, right?
Right.
If you start on a better keel, other teams will adapt and learn and figure out, okay, maybe the threat is Memento Blanc. We've seen it a few times on stage. These guys are consistent. We need to figure out how to shut them down. Not sure if you guys caught it a moment or two ago, our technicians just carrying on a replacement PC on stage. The same issue happened again with Odo's PC, so we're going to just swap out the entire box, and we'll get him up and running as quickly as possible. And it is an exciting start to the split. We're in this position now where Roccat may be looking pretty good again, you know, playing from a deficit, making the right calls. The Baron maybe slow, but clean for the most part, you know. I asked you to think about grading their first Baron setup.
So what do you want to grade them a week?
Let's go with champion rating, you know, S, A, B, C, D.
A, B, C, D,
So
okay.
S being the absolute top tier. How would you rate Rockat's player on Baron?
I would give this one a B.
Okay.
Largely because I felt like there was a big opportunity for them, specifically when Splyce were going back, where they should have tried to force it, and they didn't. I'm not sure how much visibility they had on the summoner spells of Odo, but the fact that they used teleports and forced the Baron once Splyce had been able to go back to base, push out some of the waves, and then actually come and contest, is a bit like not picking the best time, you know? They're not optimizing the amount of control that they have. So last week when I saw them, I thought that their first Baron was an A, second Baron was an S. It was absolutely clean, very flawless. It was pretty much impossible for G2 to contest. And this second Baron was much better, looked more like an A-grade style Baron setup. So I would highly recommend those that are interested in improving their Baron setup and playing around Baron. This game and last week's game are great examples of how to play around that Baron in the mid to late game.
Gives you so much to theory craft around, so much to look at, and you know, ward placement for the team attempting the Baron and the team trying to defend the Baron being taken. Got an update as well. Odo is back onto the client. He's now just reconfiguring his settings. Every time we boot these things up, it's a fresh, clean start, so got to make sure it's all set to comfort.
And to remind people, Splyce have 2 inhibitors left up of the 3. They are now defending against minion waves that are sieging into their base. Everyone is near enough to, or pretty much on full build, and Splyce have yet to successfully find a fight. And as I see Odo Omni reconnect to the game, I can only imagine that from Rockat's perspective, they just should have a clean and easy closeout from here.
I mean, they should, right? Tempered, controlled. I've seen crazier things happen. I don't know how many of you guys have watched some of the games from the LCK, but they had a 94-minute epic.
Yes.
Last week, it had over 1,500 CS by a Sivir in that game.
When you think Jinair cannot make the meme any bigger, they go and do it.
They do indeed. And of course, we've had our own epic, 67 minutes last week.
It was Splyce.
Splyce against Unicorns of Love. The reason I bring that up, when you've got a Varus with Hurricane and an Azir, there is tools to defend and hold tight. And ladies and gentlemen, I can update you that Odo is back in the game, is ready to play, and his settings have been reconfigured. Vedius gave us a great summary. There's a 14,000 gold deficit. There are 2 inhibitors still standing, but for how much longer? Prophet has now raged out and gone into the Mega Gnar form. Flashes up and available to him, but where's a juicy target? Inhibitor number 2 will fall. Kabi is pulled away to deal with the super minions, and the rest of Roccat are looking for inhibitor number 3. It is so difficult to come back from double super minions in all of the lanes. That's the reward for securing 3 inhibs. There's the flashy engage, manages to catch Blanc. Blanc is using Ghost to try run away. Memento's chunked down low. Norscarin's up on the front line. Prophet got GA available. He hops and skips forward, gets chunked out. GA's popped. Meganard starting to time. Kasing gets killed. The TK's down. It's a double kill for Blanc as Roccat finished the 3rd inhibitor. Now it's a 5v3 and Splyce somehow have to defend. How long will Roccat stay and do they go for the win?
Roccat finding another successful fight. Splyce doing their best to hold on, but it's only a matter of time as Prophet flashes in.
That's the flash! Meganard from Prophet takes down Cobby. He cues the last man standing. Xerxes goes golden. The stopwatch finally used. An ace for Roccat. It secures the base, and that means Splyce are taken down by Roccat.
Happiness and elation arises from this Roccat squad, now 2-1 after 3 days of play here in the European LCS. What an enjoyable team to watch. What a great start to their split, especially when so many analysts had such low expectations. Giants winning today, Roccat winning today. These underdogs are definitely coming to play.
Showing up big time. Roccat organization join their players on stage. That puts them at 2 wins, 1 loss now. The only team Roccat wins. Splyce 0-3. As we finish that off, and you know, Memento leads the charge for the squad right now. Getting over for the handshakes.
And it's so... The reason why I love seeing things like this is because HiQ and Prophet had a bad split on NIP. They were sitting at the bottom of the table for so long, and now they've just got a couple of different players, they're in a new environment, and you can just see the potential of these individuals. Like, a bad split does not suddenly regard the entire skill, the potential of an individual.
Yep.
You just give them a new environment, you give them new opportunities, and some are able to shine.
It also depends so much on the synergy, how they work together.
Exactly.
Are they aligned? You know, on the Splyce side, 5 veterans, 5 guys with experience, lots of previous teams. But this man, Memento, heard him speaking in the video feature leading up to this week, talking about how he wants to, you know, come back, prove that he belongs. He has learned from his previous mistakes, and he's got a couple of very hungry rookies around him, Blanc in particular.
Yep.
Another very good showing, another very good performance, especially in that late stage of the game.
Yeah, I am very excited for this Roccat roster. It makes Roccat versus Giants all the more exciting, right? The possibilities of which one of these 2 rookie squads will be able to come out on top. So many more exciting games to come later on in the day. And then we get to see how do H2K do against, because they'll be going up against Misfits.
They will.
This one.
They will. And it's such an interesting setup. We've got a couple teams now, you know, 2-1, 0-3, 1-2s are going to be expected. But it's trying to find the trends.
Yeah.
It's trying to figure out which of these teams in the opening few weeks can fix the mistakes they have, adapt, and then also grow on stage. And that's where Roccat are hitting hard now. But the real trick is to maintain that level and get better as you approach playoffs.
Yeah, it certainly will be. The regular season is rather long. Best of ones mean that much more, and it's all about securing one of those top 6 spots. And for some of our teams, things might be looking a little dire, but fortunately, there's a lot of time for them to rectify their issues.
18 games is what each of these teams will play in a split. That's enough from us for now, so let's send it to Law and hear what HiQ has to say after the win.
Thank you very much, Trevor. I'm here standing with HiQ, rather this convincing win against Splyce. Thank you very much for joining me here.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, you must be pretty happy about this win.
Yeah, definitely. To be honest, like our practice leading up to this week was kind of rough, so I'm actually really glad we could pull it together, and we got a pretty convincing win against Splyce. So
well,
yeah,
you
I feel happy.
guys did so well, but I mean the last 10 minutes felt a bit messy here.
Yeah.
Why was it difficult to close out the game?
Honestly, I think in this meta especially, you kind of need like 2 or 3 Nashers plus Elder to actually like finish the game. Because like enemy team had Azir and Varus, and like they had like basically all the wave clear. So I think even if it took a long time, then I think we still managed to close it up pretty convincingly. But it could have still been better, obviously.
I want to talk to you about communication within the team, because you have 2 Korean players. How is it going?
Honestly, I think from community's perspective, it might seem that since we have 2 Koreans, we don't have that good communication, but actually Prophet and Blanc are actually pretty good at English, so I don't think we have any problems communicating in English, and yeah, I think it's going pretty well.
Well, it seems to be working well for you guys.
Yeah.
One last question. The games are pretty long at the moment. How does it feel as a player to play such long games on stage?
It's definitely a lot more exhausting. Thank God it's best of 1, not best of 3 anymore with this meta. Even though they're pretty exhausting, I guess they're still, as a player, it's still pretty intense, and it's not really as boring, like compared to like a viewer perspective, right? So yeah, I'm fine with it.
Well, I mean, that's good, and congratulations
Thank you.
again for your win. I'm sorry. We're going to take a quick break, and right after, I'll be joining Hussein Mousvi for an interview.
Crowd game, Berlin, Germany. Putting your hands together. Loaded the game for Splyce versus Roccat. Round 1. Through the fray, and Niski with the Shurima shuffle pulls it short. Blank is able to escape.